Hey everybody, welcome back to another Building Bridges podcast. I'm your host, Greg Johnson, with my co-host, Marco Alvarado. And together we're going to have a conversation, as we always do, about things that people might disagree about, either talking about them or to them, and demonstrating that we can talk about those things which we disagree about in an agreeable manner. That is both a human courtesy as well as a spiritually enriching idea. So welcome to Building Bridges, Pastor Marco and my good friend. How are you? Welcome to Building Bridges. This is our third episode together, fourth.
I believe so. I think it's
we did John MacArthur
4.
together or not?
We did.
And then we did our Hope America Charlie Kirk one.
Yes, and maybe we can give an update for our audience how that went. But
then we did one about Rabbi Zacharias.
Yeah. So yes, hey, thank you very much, everybody, for connecting with us. I really want to shout out all the people that has leaving some comments on the last one, especially with Ravi. I don't know.
We had a great comment from a guy who was talking about how COVID sidelined him, and he started to get into podcasts, and he was an atheist. He was not a Christian.
And many of Ravi's videos help him to kind of like learn about truth and reality, and people as well saying things like about the message and the messenger, which was the purpose of
was the focus of our podcast.
Yeah.
Can we listen to a messenger who is flawed?
Yeah.
Does the message get lost if the communicator is someone who has failed?
Yeah. And some of the things that I believe, especially with the subject that we're going to be talking today, is important, because here's the part where enter this idea of being willing to openness. You know what I mean? I think everything is start when you're open for communication, open for a dialogue.
Yeah.
And I think the purpose of this podcast is to build a bridge where there's nothing, or historically maybe hasn't been. So let's jump. Maybe you can.
Well, I want to just say something, because I try to mention it in my intro too, that there are things that we demonstrate and there are things that we articulate. So we can talk about what does it look like to be a bridge builder and not a wall builder. And then sometimes we can actually demonstrate it with a guest that might have a differing point of view. So I think that what makes our podcast and our focus relevant, hopefully, to our viewers and listeners, is that we know things are volatile. That if you disagree, and this is a huge thing right now, literally people are very, very angry at the Trump administration for having ICE, which is our federal authority to remove illegal immigrants from our country or to deal with that matter, that there is such a compassion or an angst with those folks about what Trump and ICE is doing, that they want to show up and they want to protest, they want to blow whistles, and they want to dress up like furry creatures and all kinds of things. But now it's getting more dangerous. People are using their cars, ramming people, throwing rocks, confronting police officers, ICE agents. And here's the deal. Like yesterday, they picked up a known pedophile abuser. They rescued, in fact, they have rescued over 30,000 trafficked children or discarded children or lost children. Literally, the Biden administration probably lost close to 300,000 children.
Yeah.
They walked over the border and they had a phone number on their hand or their phone number in their pocket. They called those people. They didn't know if they were a friend or foe. And they come and get this little guy, and off they go, and who knows what happens to that kid?
Yeah, I mean, by
Horrible.
the way, our podcast is not about that, but I think it's important to mention a couple of things here because we are a bridge builders. Sorry.
My friend is from the South, as you can tell.
So, but the main thing that I want to say here is that I agree in a lot of the things that you are saying, but there's something else that I feel happened when it comes to this situation where me being an Hispanic, okay,
Yeah.
I can be in a position as a Hispanic person, illegal in this country, saying like, yeah, kick everybody out. I think most of Hispanic, even illegal immigrants they agree with the fact that there's a lot of bad people coming. But I think, in my opinion, it has to become to a reform when it comes to the situation.
Oh,
I think,
I
for example,
absolutely agree.
and I'm not going to try to spend too many time on this, but you have situations with families that came to this country, and kids that they were maybe 2-3 years old.
Right.
They came illegal, and now today they are older. They are
They're adults. They're married. They have kids. They are kids.
and this is the thing. This is the fact. What do you do with that kind of situation? You know what I mean? What do you do?
They're affectionately called dreamers.
Exactly. You have the other subject of people that has created businesses here, contribute to the country with their taxes. They're illegal. And the government doesn't have any problem receiving that money, they being good citizen, quote, okay? So what do you do with them? You know what I mean? So I think it would be great for our representative and for our president to start a bigger conversation when it comes to this situation. You know what I mean? What can we do? You know what I mean? My offer is simple. We should give them residency. Give them residency, maybe without the option to become citizens, but give them the option to be legal here. You know what I mean? If you see the record of a person that has been 10, 20 years here, paying their taxes, getting family, making this country great, let's help them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And let's make the path easy for those, and let's maybe make the path harder for those who are kind of like doing bad things.
Well, I mean, the only reason we brought up immigration and ICE and all that is to simply say that is a very volatile and dividing topic in our country right now, and some people are taking to the streets and really in stepping into violence and aggression for whatever reason. And again, it's interesting because, like, on the case of some, not all, or maybe not even many, but some that the people that they are getting off of the street and out of our country are violent criminals, or some of the people that have done really bad things to kids. So we like, for example, I'm just saying, like, if that's happening, if violent criminals are being caught and removed, that should be something, I think, that most of us would feel very good about. The idea that, so if you're here in our country illegally and you're doing bad things to people and you're hurting children and you're hurting women and all that, you can't stay here. You got to go.
No, I agree. And I think connecting it with what we're going to be talking today, I think violence when it comes to defending those things is never the key. Whatever position you are, if you are in the position of trying to kind of like push forward the fact that ICE can go and take people out and try to defend those who are maybe not doing anything bad, if we go and try to fight to resolve the issue, we will never get to a place where we can really do something. Here's bringing it to the subject, because for people that maybe don't know, we are here in Utah, and historically has been the situation where, and maybe you might understand watching at your house, we have LDS knocking our doors, and maybe Jehovah's Witness, and as evangelicals or Christians, we have this tendency, rather than to start a dialogue and to start a conversation, we move from that to violence in terms of, I don't want to talk to you. We close the door.
Sometimes slam the door.
Yes, the violence.
Yeah, the anger, the contempt.
And maybe that shows something that we are not willing or open for conversation.
Right.
You know what I mean? So what I want to ask you, though, is because you are known as a person being here in Utah as a bridge builder for many, many years, to the point that, in fact, you can share this if you want, but recently we have Greg Laurie coming to Utah, and you were able to create connection to bring him to the LDS facility where the leaders of the LDS group are, and you were able to create those connections with Greg Laurie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that didn't happen just because. Had happened because you being, for how many years, you will say?
Well, I've been in Utah for 33 years. We've been leading Standing Together for 25 years. So a combined total of time, over 30 years.
And that is the thing, you see. So you being doing this, starting this relationship, and obviously we share a little bit when we were talking about Pastor MacArthur story with LDS. You were sharing a little bit. There's a background with you when it comes to this thing, which is you used to be an LDS kid. You grew up in a LDS household, but what prompted you to start, when you come to Utah, to start this, or it was always from the moment that you became evangelical, your goal was to create this type of
kind of a bridge building ministry
person for?
Yeah, I mean, actually, I spent a good number of years in my high school days, in my college days, being involved in what I call more controversial or confrontational, for sure, confrontational ideas.
In what regard?
Of interacting with Latter-day Saints.
Oh,
so I would go down to Temple Square and hand out pieces of paper that said your church is a cult. Or
you did that?
Yes. Oh yeah, you didn't know that?
I didn't know that.
High school and college, I came and I was a kind of an anti-Mormon guy.
This is new information for me.
Interesting. Yeah. There was a lot of pageants that the LDS Church used to host, the Hail Cumorah pageant, the Manti Miracle pageant down in Manti, and various other ones. And I was one of the first students to go down to the Manti Miracle pageant in 1985 and share my faith with the Latter-day Saints through materials that were very offensive to them, by what they said and the content.
So, but when you said very violent, what do you mean about it? You going to hell?
Very violent? They weren't violent. They were
offensive.
Offensive. Yeah, they were offensive. It would bring up doctrinal distinctions between the LDS Church and historic Christianity on who is God, who is Jesus, what happens in a temple, various things about Joseph Smith, Brigham Young, polygamy, blacks in the priesthood, Adam-God doctrine, a lot of doctrinal distinctions then that were very much focused on in the evangelical Latter-day Saint relationship.
Will you say that those pamphlets were more focused on the differences?
Oh, sure. And they were sensational. It'd be just like a little paragraph, a little quote, and it would be...
Did you know that?
Yeah. Joseph Smith once said, and, Lorenzo Snow said this, and you would read those things. They were like little bullet points, and it was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe these people believe all this crazy stuff, So I did that in high school. I did that in college. And yet, what was unsatisfying to me...
Before that, did you ever see any people kind of like asking those, oh, I didn't know that.
No, in fact, that's a constant memory of mine. Is I would oftentimes leave a situation or an event or a place, and my first thought in my mind was, why do the people that I love the most and desire to share with them some of the new things I've learned about Jesus and about the Bible, they think that I'm their critic and enemy, therefore the people that I love the most seem to hate me back the most. I was perplexed in my ministry to think that by telling them the truth and giving them what I perceived to be the truth about what the Bible taught on doctrine, that they were not receptive, they were not responsive, they were not agreeable, they were not open to a conversation. Yeah. They were offended because I was saying things like, the LDS Church is not a Christian church. Joseph Smith was a false prophet. The Book of Mormon doesn't exist. It's not a historical book.
Yeah.
And those things are fighting words, as we say. Them's fighting words kind of thing.
In a way, it was kind of like conflict. Starting the conversation with a hit in the face rather than maybe kindness and love. And I mean, by the way, I feel like that still happened.
Sure.
For their conferences.
It happens here in Utah, but it also happens a lot outside of Utah. And literally, I had the privilege of being interviewed. I think it goes live today on Christianity Today online magazine, a story that they did about the Greg Laurie Harvest Crusade event. And I know she interviewed lots of different people here in Utah about the event itself and what's going on in our culture. But in my interview with her, one of the questions that the reporter said is, do you think what you guys are doing and accomplishing in Utah could serve as a model for the nation? Because there's so much division in our society over race, over immigration, over sex, over gender, over you name it. Red versus blue, Trump versus Harris, all the political stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know that everybody will look at us and say, they've shown the way. But I do think we could make a case that engaging the mindset, the worldview, or the culture of Utah in the old-fashioned way, where we got our Bibles, we stood on street corners, we proclaimed truth about who God was and who Jesus is and who God is and what the Bible is and what sin is and what salvation is, and telling our Latter-day Saint friends as they're walking on the sidewalk over to their general conference session is far more irritating and hurtful to them than it is helpful or enlightening.
Now, that is the thing that you used to do as a
young...
I
would never call myself a street preacher, but I was definitely a guy that was driven by apologetics.
Okay.
And apologetics, we've talked about that when we talked about Ravi. Apologetics is not saying you're sorry for being a Christian. It is literally a Greek word that means to make a defense for.
It's a defense, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the defending of Christianity. But that was my model, and I would use the biblical passages and I would use the philosophical arguments to say that your view of God is wrong and this is why. And you asked the question, how successful was that? How many people did I ever run into that said, wow, this makes great sense. What am I believing all this other stuff for? I will drop off all my beliefs and embrace all yours, and I'll be a Christian just like you. That was not common. It rarely happened, if ever happened, in that fashion or that quickly.
Yeah.
So I want to tell our audience that, when you have a disagreement theologically with somebody else, there are certain things, I think there are at least two things that are important about that. Number one, we actually think in our head, we decide to ourselves, is this like a salvific issue? If this guy believes that we're all going to wear gold suits in heaven, you might think that's weird, but if that was the only difference that he had from your view of Christianity, I don't know that you could say, well, he believes in Jesus, he loves Jesus, he understands the Trinity, he understands salvation by grace alone, he understands he's a sinner in need of a Savior, he understands the Bible is God's unique authority, but doggone it, for some crazy reason, he believes that everybody's going to wear gold suits in heaven, therefore he's going to hell. Now, I'm just using that to be silly, But if that were the thing that you would say would keep somebody out of heaven, for whatever reason they might believe it, then I think your view of heaven is maybe too narrow. So I would say there are things that we might say to one another within the body of Christ for sure. Hey, you believe women can be pastors. I don't believe women can be pastors. Well, one of us is right and one of us is wrong. But regardless of who's right and who's wrong, when we stand before God, would God say to me, you had everything right, you believed so clearly, you loved Jesus so much, but you thought women could be pastors, and therefore you must now go to hell. Now, some people would take it to that level and say, yes, if you have that wrong, then you don't believe in the Bible, and if you don't believe in the Bible, then you can't go to heaven. That would be their mindset. We would say, and we would not only say it in between conversations between fellow evangelicals, but with Latter-day Saints, with Catholics, with Orthodox Christians, with nominal Christians, with people who are not Christians at all, professing atheists and agnostics, that what we're trying to do is create a conversation that moves us forward, not backwards. And that forward conversation would at least consist of understanding. I think I was going to say two things about kind of the approach to engaging. You remember what the first thing I said?
In regards to
how do we engage people from a different faith and how we have conversations with them?
I don't remember, to be honest. You said right now?
Yeah, just said it just now.
I don't know. Because I'm thinking on something that is coming to my mind.
You want to roll it back and figure it out?
This is the part that I think, and I'm trying to play the other side too.
Right.
Because while I'm listening to you, and you put this example in, it struck me when you said that about
the golden
thing. Because when it comes to LDS, when it comes to, please enlighten me here, maybe I'm wrong. When it comes to LDS, when it comes to maybe Muslims, or there is a big distinction. It's not what type of clothes you're going to be wearing.
That was my point.
Or even with Catholics, okay?
Yeah, sure.
For example, with Catholics, there are so many similarities, and sometimes I feel like we get stuck on the fact that if Mary ascended to heaven,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm like, how does that affect me? If Mary really ascended to heaven, how does it affect my salvation if I don't believe it? Because the scripture doesn't say, believe that Mary ascended to heaven in order for me to be saved.
Right.
The scripture is clear to say that it's through Jesus, through his act on the cross, is by grace alone, and putting my faith in him.
I just want to say, for our audience's sake, number one was we have to determine the degree of importance of our disagreement.
Okay.
So, again, a Catholic says you have to believe in the Pope, or you have to believe in Mary as an intercessor. I have a dear, sweet Catholic friend. She tells me all the time, I'm praying the rosary for you, Greg, and for your wonderful ministry. And I think to myself, do I want her to pray the rosary for me? I don't operate with the rosary. It's not a tool I have ever used in my prayer life. I understand kind of its role in the Catholic Church, but I literally find myself saying, well, I don't do a rosary. I don't think you have to do a rosary, but my friend is a Catholic. She believes that this rosary is a very helpful way to pray. So I just receive the gift of her prayers, and I say thank you.
Yeah.
I don't want to have an argument with her about whether or not the rosary should be or should not be used. So we first and foremost have to engage the level of importance of our disagreement.
Yeah, and here's the part
But when it's just a peripheral thing, then we can have a conversation. I can tell you I think you're wrong. You can tell me I think I'm wrong. But that's our opinion.
Yes.
And let me quote Rabbi Zacharias here. Opinion. He said, when you hold to an opinion, or when you believe in when you have an opinion, that is something that you hold. You hold an opinion of whether that painting is beautiful or ugly. It's not really
that's objective.
Objective fact. It's just your preference, your opinion. But a conviction is something that holds you. You hold an opinion A conviction, a matter of truth, holds you. You can't sway from it. You can't say that building in front of me doesn't exist. Therefore, I'm going to drive my car right through it and go through it like it's thin air. No, you hit that building with your car going 60 miles an hour, you're probably going to die.
Yeah.
That is objective. That conviction, that truth is unalterable.
Okay.
So we hold opinions, but convictions hold us.
Okay.
And can I just say the second thing? Because I think the first thing is we have to examine the level of importance of our disagreement. And then two, when the issue is that significant that, yes, this is a critical point of disagreement, we still have to operate with tools of respect, kindness, and love.
Yes.
Because all we do is create heat, no light.
Yeah. And here's the part that I think you're saying a clever thing when it comes to the situation, because you're saying, okay, we need to, first of all, distinguish those key things that are different. And you know what is the thing that I see a lot when it comes to evangelicals today is we are ignorant in our faith, and we are ignorant about others' faith.
Yeah.
So I can't get to that point of identify those key issues because I don't really know what those key issues are,
or whether they are key issues. You might, again, what we're dividing, and that's kind of why I brought the whole thing up with immigration at the beginning. I'm convinced if the most pro-immigration person and the most anti-immigration person stood face to face and said, that person right there is illegally in our country, and they rape children, and they rape women, and they beat up people, and they steal, and they've murdered, I don't think there will be a massive disagreement that this person should be gone.
Yeah.
Because that's so obvious. But then as you kind of go from that most extreme example into the everyday issues of immigration, maybe this person says, but this person is just trying to leave a terrible way of life for their family and their home origin country, and they're a positive contribution to society. They pay their taxes, yada yada yada. And they make a case. Then we have to kind of begin to navigate those differences and not just say, I'm right, you're wrong, and I don't like you, so I'm going to hit you in the face.
Yeah. So, and this is the other thing. The same way that I'm saying that a lot of evangelicals, we lack of this knowledge or this information. And I think scripturally, we are commanded to be prepared, to know,
To always be ready to give an answer for the hope that lies within you.
The same way that we are sometimes ignorant about our own faith and the faith of others, I feel like when it comes to LDS, they are ignorant in their own faith, because it's kind of like if we both are blind by our own belief, you know what I mean? Thinking, for example, when you ask an LDS person about Jesus, they will think that we are talking about the same thing. And maybe a Christian or an evangelical will be like, yeah, it's Christ. I mean, there's this video that Sean McDowell, I think, he put on his, is a short video where is this LDS family, and they are kind of like making this video about they show the Bible, they show kind of like the phrase in the video is like, why you say we're not Christians, something like that.
Yeah.
And they show the Bible, they show that in their church, and this is something that they always say, we believe in Jesus, because the name of our church is the Church of Jesus Christ.
Of Latter-day Saints.
Yes. So, but we can be talking about Chile, my country. I can say, let's talk about Chile, and you start talking about the spice, but I'm referring
to a country.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's another piece of the dialogue skill. You need to be able to understand your terms and define them. If I'm talking about Jesus and you're talking about Jesus, we can assume that we're talking about the same being, the same person, the same
Yeah.
historical figure, or even the same theological figure,
Now, the part that is important here is because you said the second thing is we need to approach this conversation, but it has to be with love, with kindness, open to disagreements. You know what I mean? But not trying to convince anybody, just to present the fact. Now, you were saying that when you start this approach to LDS, your approach was you're wrong, I'm right, and I want desperately to come to the right side.
Yeah.
What happened?
Well, this is a great departure. So we've kind of been talking about the matter. Now we're going to speak specifically to the matter. We just had Greg Laurie here in Utah. We had a wonderful night. He gave a gospel presentation. There were many LDS people in the room. There were many non-LDS people in the room. My sister and I, she's my older sister. She's 10 years older than me. And we have had times where our relationship was very good and very close, other times where it wasn't so good. Currently, we have a very close relationship, and it's very good and positive. And her husband came with her to the Greg Laurie Harvest Hope for America crusade.
Her husband.
Yeah, her husband. Did I say that?
Yeah.
Yeah. She and her husband, and they're both born-again Christians. But they have struggled, particularly my sister, has struggled in the past with the way I do what I do in my ministry, thinking that I'm being too friendly to the Latter-day Saints.
Okay.
I'm hobnobbing, I'm name-dropping, I'm acting like I'm a big shot because I know apostles and I know General Authority 70, and I travel with some of the BYU professors or whatever. And so I'm kind of caught up. That's the accusation. I'm caught up with all this, this name dropping and high interactions, high level interactions. Well, I thought this was a wonderful thing because now, she saw me when I was a younger guy, knew that I kind of did the apologetic thing.
Yeah.
And now what I would call my life is more of a missional example, that I try to live out my faith and be on mission every day. And I want people to see my life in action. I want them to hear my words. And I want to be friendly and kind and gracious.
Yeah.
Because I think that opens up doors.
Yeah.
And the doors that I want to get to are, do you know who Jesus Christ is? The door I want to get to is, can I tell you about the most important person in my life?
The doors that you want to open are the ones that are going to be for those big, deep differences.
It leads to that, absolutely, because you can't explain doctrine or theology and gospel without unpacking how somebody else might see that and how differently they might see it. But going back to my sister, she was in the stands while I was greeting the various guests that I had. We had Congressman Mike Kennedy with us. We had the former governor with us. We had a mayor from Cottonwood Heights with us. We had several faculty from the Orem Institute with their families with us.
Yeah.
And I was greeting them and bringing them to their seats and talking with them. And my sister said that she and her husband kind of observed me in that way. And they kind of had an aha moment, like, wow, Greg really has unique relationships with these people. This is not hobnobbing, and this is not about ego and my flesh. This is the unique position God has put my brother in to have these relationships, and they trust you, and they believe in you. And you and I know this. It's not probably public knowledge, but a lot of those connections opened up the door for us to even be at Utah Valley University for the Hope for America event. It wasn't like Greg Laurie just called UVU and said, hey, can I come and have an event there? No. He relied on us. He relied on someone like me who has the relationships with the former governor and the current, Mormon General Authority 70 that I worked with, who used to be the president of the university, and all those doors were open. We never had to fill out a form. We never had to ask whether or not we could use this place. We were just granted permission because of the people who spoke up for us.
Yeah.
And why did they speak up for us? Because they have trust in us.
Yeah.
Because they know us. They have relationship with us. And that is lost to some people. They think, oh, you're just playing the the good guy role, and you're dropping names and you're talking like you're some big important guy. No, we build relationships and we seek to gain trust so that we can have the deeper conversations.
Yeah. Now, getting back to the question, you were doing it wrong.
Yeah. Well, I was doing it one way.
That is better.
And I would say, the way I talk about it today is that I don't think in the 90s and early 2000s, I don't think it was terribly effective.
Now, you will, because of this, you were doing it on a specific way, but what happened? What made you realize? You were kind of like starting to say, you were thinking in this fact of, this is not working. I mean, I'm presenting truth. People is not opening their eyes. What's going? Yeah. What happened in your mind?
Well, I was going to say, in all of my temple tracting and anti-miracle pageant tracting and door-to-door witnessing and being active in that, never do you have that what I call the V8 moment. The old commercial about V8, that tomato juice drink that people drink. It has 8 essential vitamins and irons or whatever, and they used to do this commercial where they would hit their head like, oh, I could have had a V8, because instead they got a beer or they got a soda pop or whatever, or some sugary drink, and I could have had a V8. Well, it's like nobody ever said that. Oh, you're right and I'm wrong. You've argued me out of my beliefs in 20 minutes into your beliefs. And I thought to myself, this is very ineffective. And the people that I love the most, the people that I want to have a relationship with, the people I want to share the good news of Jesus Christ with, are completely resistant to me and completely offended by me and want me to go away. And I kept, like, as a high school kid and a college kid and a seminary guy, I'd be like, the people I love the most don't want me around. How is this a good thing? Mm-hmm. And if I got to be a person that they liked and trusted, would I have to compromise my convictions about the doctrinal distinctions, or could I retain them and have conversations as friends as opposed to adversaries? So that was kind of the starting point.
That is a key word, by the way.
Yeah.
Changing it from adversaries to friends, I think that is...
And a lot of people call that understanding our common humanity.
Yeah.
We're all human beings. You may be a Muslim believer. You may be a Jewish believer. You may be a Catholic believer. You might be a Hindu believer. You might be a Buddhist believer. If you were born in the Far East, you're probably going to be Buddhist. If you're born in India, you're probably going to be Hindu. If you're born in the Middle East, you're probably going to be Muslim.
Yeah.
If you're going to be, if you're born in Africa, you could be an assortment of eclectic religions. So what we do is that we come into contact with people, and we have to kind of begin where they're at. And so we show them courtesy. We show them. And I had 2 professors, Dr. Ronald Enroth at Westmont College and Dr. Gordon Lewis at Denver Seminary. And one of the things that I heard from them, some of the first things I ever heard that were different than the way I approached my conversations with Latter-day Saints, was that every person, regardless of what they believe and regardless of what group they're associated with, deserve the same level of respect that you would want for yourself. If you
golden rule.
If you want to be respected, you need to respect them. They might, again, okay, and I just have to say it this way. You might meet somebody who says it's their religion to do awful and terrible things to people.
Yeah.
I cannot respect that. I cannot look in their eye and say, well, I don't agree with what you're doing, but if that's what you believe God wants you to do, go ahead and do it. No, there is evil, there is violence, and there is stuff that must be exposed, and there's stuff that must be rebuked, and there's stuff that must be, prioritized over any kind of relationship. So yes, let us know that if somebody is doing something hurtful or damaging or manipulative, then we must confront it. Now, on the flip side, there is this range of people who believe stuff, and we believe in America. It's your right to believe whatever religion you want to believe in. It's called the right to be,
the freedom of religion.
The freedom of religion. There you go. Thank you. So we have to enter into that conversation not as I must stop you, but I'd like to influence you. I'd like to talk to you. And the principles of people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, or you earn the right to be heard. Those are two principles that make sense. And so when my sister saw me interacting with our leaders and LDS people, I mean, I had 29 guests at the event the other night, and I was delighted in it. I just love sharing what I want them to experience in the message, in the music, in every part of it. You know, Greg Laurie said something the other night that to me was like a perfectly stated statement. If you have tried religion, if you have tried to be good, if you've tried to be worthy, and that's failed you, why don't you try Jesus? See, to me, that's the quintessential line. Sometimes we try to be religious, we try to be good on our own, we try to be worthy of heaven, and all that just doesn't work. And then what Christianity says, no, don't try those things. Try Jesus, and let Jesus come in and make you worthy. Let Jesus come into your life and make you good. Come into Jesus' life and turn your religion into a relationship with Him.
Okay, so here's the part where I'm thinking, in my mind is going this idea, somebody's watching the video is going to put in the comments, but their Jesus is different.
Yeah.
What will you say?
Well, okay, so we've done those things which we've already talked about, and either in the context of friendship or in the context of a civil conversation, because sometimes you meet somebody on an airplane, you don't have a friendship with that person, you just have maybe an hour on a flight, and if they're receptive and you're receptive and everybody's willing to have that conversation, so you enter into that conversation, you say, I mean, specifically, since you asked, I'm going to deal with that topic. So is the person of Jesus Christ, as we understand him as a historic creedal Christian, which would associate us with the last 2,000 years of Christian history, which includes, by the way, and most theologians would affirm what I'm about to say, the Catholic Christian expression, the Orthodox Christian expression, and the Protestant evangelical expression. So even though there are differences between Catholicism and evangelical Protestantism or Orthodoxy, most would agree that of those three major segments of the Christian world, the Christian worldview, there is enough common identity with, for example, the triune nature of God, that we believe in one God who reveals himself as Father, Son, and Spirit, so three persons in one being. That is collectively embraced, so we don't have a difference there.
Yeah.
And the uniqueness of Jesus Christ as co-equal and co-eternal with God the Father and God the Spirit, and how he is uniquely able to save, that we're saved by grace through faith in Christ alone. So those things exist. As a former Latter-day Saint, and as a current evangelical, and I've been trained academically, and I've been in ministry for 33 years, we would have to have a conversation about who do you think Jesus is, and who do I think Jesus is?
And I think here's the part where it comes to the main question, but I really want to go back to your story, because it is important.
But you did ask me to finish.
No. Obviously. I want to, because I know there's somebody that
somebody's wondering.
Yeah.
But
you were doing the apologetic approach. Something happened. So what happened, and what did you start doing?
And I, maybe for the sake of our audience, we apologize for kind of getting off track a number of times today. But I had these two professors, Ron Enroth and Dr. Gordon Lewis, who kind of really emphasized
that kind of like resonate with you.
We need to respect people that we disagree with, and that they are deserving. When the Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal, that means all men and women are created equal. We have to show them all respect.
Yeah.
So again, you disagree, you still respect. And then as I walked through that journey, this was very specifically a part of that shift in me, is that I decided one day to go to an LDS ward, not far from where my local church met. It was
at that point, evangelical.
I was an evangelical Christian seminary student. I was preparing for pastoral ministry, which eventually led me to Utah in 1992. And I wanted to do something, and I was leading a college ministry at Bear Valley Baptist Church in the Denver area. And I went out to an LDS ward, and I went through the service, sat through the whole service. I was nothing more than a visitor. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody knew I was there. And I identified who the bishop was in the meeting. And so I walked up to the bishop, and I said, "Hi, my name is Greg Johnson. I'm a student at Denver Seminary. I serve the Bear Valley Baptist Church, and we're about to do a series on understanding other people's religion. And I was wondering if somebody from your church would be willing to come and talk to the members of my college ministry. And actually, I want to go one step further. I want to invite your college ministry to join us. And we're going to have a meal, like a spaghetti meal or something. We'll feed you, and then you guys can tell us what you believe and allow us to ask you questions."
Wow.
Well, one of the things that came out as a result of that, and this is built into
What
the idea,
what did he said?
he was so flattered. He said, "Absolutely, we'd love to do that." And because of the way I played it and trusting God, the thing that I thought he would do is exactly what he did do. Well, not only do we want to share with you what we believe, we want someone from your group to share what you guys believe so our students can understand it. So if you're going to open up the door for us, by all means, we will also ask you to have somebody to share. I said, "Great idea." And so we hosted them for what we called a hospitality night. We had food. Once the food was over, we gathered around in a big circle. There was maybe 15 or 20 of us, 15 or 20 of them. And we asked, would you make a presentation or would you select a person? So one or two of them gave a testimony of what they believe. And then the next person. And then we asked them questions. And then it flip-flopped. They said, would some of your students give a testimony and tell us what they believe? And they did. And uniquely, the words that were used, the sentiments that were shared, the doctrines that were focused on were very different. The LDS people in those examples tended to rely heavily upon their testimony of their LDS church. They would say, "I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and the church means everything to me, and I love the church, and through the church
I believe
have
in
this
the Book
and
of
this and this
Mormon."
and this." Yeah, and it was all references there. But when the evangelical guys, nobody said, "I love my church, Bear Valley Baptist Church, and it's our pastor," and da-da-da. No, they all talked about Jesus and this personal relationship. And that became apparent. We would wrap up the night at some point. We'd have like a recreational thing. We'd go to the gym and play volleyball in our church. We had a gym. And so we would do it that way. We did multiple examples of what we called hospitality nights. And I even did them over here in Utah. And I was going to say, just to wrap up my story, that when I became a pastor in 1992, there was still something inside of me that said we have to tell the Latter-day Saint people they're wrong.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to host seminars and invite speakers in that would be very good at kind of articulating,
bringing the truth,
tell all the false doctrines, that we perceive. Yeah. And the senior pastor that I served, Les McGee from Washington Heights, he was he's probably about 35 years older than me. He basically said no. And I pushed back like, well, why are you saying no? And he said, well, I don't think putting on the marquee in front of our church that a famous anti-Mormon guy is speaking at our church is going to help us reach our neighbors. Because they're going to see that. They're going to think our church is mean and unkind and nasty if they know that personality. And so why do we want to do that? Let's build some bridges, Greg, and let's not build walls. Now, you might think, that's a compromiser. That's a softie. There's a guy that doesn't want to speak the truth because he wants everybody to like him. So not true. He was trusting in God, and he was saying, we want to share our understanding, but we want to do it in a way that they will receive it as opposed to reject it because they think we are judging them so meanly, So because of that, I would say my seminary days with Gordon Lewis, my college days with Ron Enroth, and my days at Denver Seminary where I was doing these hospitality nights. When I came to Utah, I started to do them as well. And I found myself under the influence of Les McGee saying, this whole apologetic, confrontation, in-your-face method is very limited. I mean, do some people respond to that and change their lives?
Maybe,
I guess so. But I think it's a small number. And I think most of those people have already come to a place of some frustration or anger or a distaste for their religion before they encounter somebody whom they just go, that's exactly how I feel, So that was where the transformation in me took place. And I call it a brand new paradigm. I was a confrontationalist. Now I'm a conversationalist. I was a debater. Now I'm a dialoguer. I was hostile. Now I'm gentle. I used to be short-term, like I want to have this conversation, have it out,
Yeah.
and score a victory. Now I don't do that at all. I say, this is not about a short-term conversation. It's about a long-term friendship. And I'm going to trust God. Again, I know that I sit down on an airplane, I'm not going to have a long-term friendship with this person. But if he's my neighbor, I may have 10, 20 years with him.
Yeah.
And I'm going to pursue it at that level.
Now,
does that make sense?
No, totally. I think that is the approach that open doors in any type of circumstance. We were talking in the beginning about this issue with immigration, and if we go violently, doors will shut.
If we take up arms and start throwing bullets at each other,
gently, and we start talking about the differences, maybe we'll discover real differences for sure. Maybe I will learn something from the other point of view that I didn't see, and at the same time, maybe the other person will be willing to listen another perspective. Now, you started this at this church. What started happening?
Well, it was actually very positive, because the more we would meet, the more the bishop and the leadership would be thankful and receptive. But I did feel that there were some built-in limitations, because after meeting 2 or 3 times, I found that on the LDS side, more so than on my side, that the folks kind of said, well, we've gotten to know each other, we've shared our testimony, you've shared your testimony, we've talked about some of our differences. What's the point of this at this point? Like, why are we going to keep going? So I felt that at the local level, LDS leadership felt that it had a season, maybe 2, 3, 4 meetings at the most over the course of many months. And then they would come to the point is like, well, are you trying to convert us? Are you trying to get us to leave our faith? And it just felt like, boy, at a certain point, all this goodwill gives way to what's the end all desire here, and they would pull back. So one of the things that happened during that time is that I began to pray that God would give me more significant relationships with people who had more influence.
What does that mean, significance?
That they had more influence, that they were like leaders, that they were people that could maybe provide support for something that is a little bit more substantive interaction. So, I mean, literally, when we started the LDS Evangelical College Student Dialogue, we started that in the spring of 2003, 2003, and we were told that if we did this, that they would be sending the vice president and student dean to our meeting. And we had an LDS group of students. We had a group of evangelical students from Colorado Christian University, by the way. And we sat down, and they shared, and we shared, and they asked questions, and we asked questions.
You kind of like follow the same
pattern, same motif, same kind of
strategy or way.
And then we asked questions, they asked questions, and we just said thank you so much. We learned a lot. And the dean, this is an academic person, a vice president of a university. She comes over to me, her name is Dean Sharma. I think I'm saying that correctly. She said, Pastor Johnson, this was marvelous. To see your students be so polite and courteous to us, to have our students be so polite and courteous, and yet to really talk about some significant things, that was really brilliant. You have my permission to come as often as you would like, and I feel good that I can sign off on this. Well, I don't know why she felt one meeting was enough, but I was kind of flattered by her assessment of the situation. And for a couple years, we worked with student council, as we had, to create these dialogues, and it moved from there to a different setting in the religious education department with Robert Millett, and then there was a student advisor, and he took it up, and then after that, it actually was a she, and after that, it kind of went more to the faculty person, and we now do this through church education system, CES as it's referred to in the LDS Church. We actually have covering to allow us to go to Brigham Young University and all the institutes of religion in Utah every spring break when our students come. Now, this literally, in 2026, we'll be doing it for the 23rd year in a row.
Wow.
And what has come of that? Have we any notches in our belts? Do they have any notches in their belts? Have they led 4 evangelical college students out of Christianity as we know it and into the Latter-day Saint view of Christianity. That has not happened. Oh, it must be a complete and utter failure. Have we let any of their people out of their LDS thinking into our evangelical thinking? Nope, it hasn't happened. Not that I know of. Oh, it must be an utter failure because it's a waste of time and nobody's getting saved.
Yeah.
But we think the marker is being moved. We think that the relationships are forming and cultivating better impressions of one another, and how it's. I mean, you can compare it to anything you want. Race would be a good example. Let's say we're in the Deep South in the 1940s, and a African American gentleman walks into a very white neighborhood that has a very racist community or a component. That might not be the safest thing for that person to do that, to walk into that neighborhood, because he might be ganged up on, and they would know that wasn't a smart thing to do. But that would be wrong, and that would be evil.
Yeah.
That kind of racism would be wrong and evil, and we cannot tolerate it. But in the case of understanding our theological differences, we have to approach it differently. We have to build the relationship. We have to be willing to have the conversation without going to to put ourselves in situations where we're going to be attacked or where we're going to attack somebody, because that does not speak to the love of Jesus Christ. That is not the model we have. We have to begin with and maintain a spirit of respect, love, and kindness.
All right, so you and this whole thing has created this relationship with LDS people. You started with a different approach with in your church. After that, you moved to scholars and students, and you have that time where you were able to, for many years, work with Bob Millet, creating these dialogues which were really confrontational, where the truth were being exposed. So what do you think has brought this whole thing to this relationship, to this bridge building phenomena?
Well, I think it was incremental. It was, one step after another, and from day to day, you don't think a lot is happening, and week to week, you don't think much is happening, and month to month, you don't think much is happening. But then you look back over a year or two, and you go, wow, there's been some new relationships that have developed, and there's new opportunities. So the fact that they would allow us as evangelicals to come on campus at BYU or the Institutes of Religion and have these conversations was that they believed that this was a good thing to do, and they believed that we would not be there to quote unquote convert them and try to lead them out of their faith. They said, hey, this is a time of not conversion but of understanding. We're going to learn about each other, and of course we left it at that because that's appropriate. And we also said, stay in touch, talk to each other, share each other's phone numbers and social media contacts, and stay in relationship and see where that goes.
Wow.
And we've always been permitted to do that. They've been permitted to do that. And so at the end of the day, what we have 25 years down the road is an opportunity to have Greg Laurie at the Utah, UCCU Event Center with their support, their encouragement, their inviting their students to participate, and helping us to fill that stadium, because they understand that what we're offering in Greg Laurie's message and Chris Tomlin's music and Phil Wickham's music is a gift, if you will, of thought and worship. And so, these dialogues, these conversations, these open doors, all of which over the course of these many years may, in the day-to-day and the week-to-week and the month-to-month and the year-to-year, not seem like that big of a deal. But over the course of multiple years, 5 years, 10 years down the road, you realize we are having conversations, and our LDS friends are talking a lot more about grace. Our LDS friends are talking a lot more about the centrality of Jesus Christ. They're referencing Book of Mormon passages that talk about being saved by grace alone. They're correcting understandings of the past where we have an apostle of the LDS Church who is the second counselor in the first presidency give a message that is called Amazing Grace.
Wow.
And where he tells us that 2 Nephi 25:23, which says we believe we're saved by grace after all we can do, cannot mean after all we can do, because we can never do enough. And so, that was Dieter Uchtdorf, by the way. And so I think we have seen incrementally a coming to a closer focus on grace and Jesus. And I think that's the most important conversation. We talked a few weeks ago about John MacArthur, and he said to Bob Millett and to Brent Topp that day that we met together, we could talk about everything, but I want to talk about the most important thing. Who is Jesus Christ to a Latter-day Saint, and who is Jesus Christ to an evangelical Christian? And that's what we kept our whole conversation, roughly 2 hours, about who do you say that he is, and who do I say that he is?
Yeah.
That's the most important thing.
Now, with all this thing, I know there's some things happening internally which I don't know how much you can share about, but it's important to see that this is not, and you have said it right now, I believe that the fact that we are talking more of grace, that we are talking more about the person of Jesus and things like that, it is a result of years of working the ground, planting the seed, you know what I mean? Establishing relationships, trusting God, and allowing the Holy Spirit to do the job. But there's a couple of things that are coming that I think as well are important because isn't a big level. I don't know how much you can share about that, but...
Well, I can say this. I can say that in the course of the last 2+ years, we have been working on something. And frankly, it goes further back than that. It's a dream I've had since the earliest days of my coming out of the LDS faith and into the evangelical, historic, creedal church. By that I mean the 7 ancient creeds of the Christian faith. The Nicene Creed, the Antiochian Creed, the Athanasius Creed. There's 7 of those. And affirming those creeds as the bedrock and foundation of Christian theology, the person of God, the nature of Jesus Christ. So, looking forward from that time, I found myself thinking, what would it be like if one day, the LDS Church's leadership and the evangelical Christian Church's leadership sat together and got to know each other? And I literally proposed a plan years ago to Elder Jeffrey R. Holland about this. Getting a group of evangelicals, getting a group of Latter-day Saints, small groups, meeting for 3 years and having substantive conversations about theological differences. Well, that didn't happen in 2012 as I proposed. But in 2023, we had Walter Kim, the president of the National Association of Evangelicals. He had become president in February of 2000, and so we had him here in Utah, and we had set up some meetings, and those meetings kind of fell through one by one. And it was a deliberate, in my opinion, failure of the church communications department because they were kind of trying to get their hands on this interaction and try to control it. And they didn't like the fact that I set these meetings up directly with the First Presidency without them, and they always get kind of frustrated with me when I don't play by the rules. So consequently, later, something was proposed, and this proposal was, why don't we see if our evangelical friends will come back to Utah, give us another chance. The word was mulligan, like in the golf term. I have a bad swing, but the ball went 3 feet. Can I have a mulligan? Can I have a do-over? They wanted a do-over with the NAE. So we finally had a conversation in December of 2023. A proposal was made for 2024. We got close to it, but we had to cancel it because of some date issues. And so it's going to be December 2025, just weeks away now. We will gather with 30 nationally known evangelical leaders and 30 prominent LDS leaders. We'll have a dinner together. We'll attend a program together, a Christmas program with the Tabernacle Choir. And then we will gather the next day for 6 hours. Wow. 6 hours of conversation. And all the people in that room, that's 60 people in that room. Some of them are leaders of denominations. Some of them are pastors of very large churches. Some of them are presidents or past presidents or professors or scholars from theological institutions. It's a who's list of prominent evangelical leadership.
Yeah.
People who are in the media world will be there. It's a pretty impressive group. On the LDS side, equally impressive. General Authority 70s, several apostles,
Wow.
auxiliary leaders.
Wow.
And we're going to be together for 6 hours. And in the first session, we're going to talk about areas where we currently are comfortable working together.
It's kind of like, in a way, hearing you saying this, it's kind of like what we said in the beginning is approaching with the things that we relate,
Yeah,
that we are comfortable.
starting with common ground. Like for example, we're both engaged in helping the poor, and when disasters hit the world, we run to those issues with Samaritan's Purse or World Vision or Compassion International or
Yeah.
the Salvation Army. They have their own relief organization. The LDS Church does. Well, we can work together, and we do work together on getting relief to the poorest of the poor and those that have been devastated by natural disasters. We also are very interested in supporting family-friendly, morally clean entertainment, like The Chosen, or like family-based media. You
Yeah.
know, and the LDS Church produces that. Evangelicals produce it. There's a new.
How can we work together?
Right. And those are two areas. Also, government interface and freedom of religion. They care about it. We care about it. And the last thing that we're going to talk about is the whole area of higher education, particularly as it pertains to faith-based education, like Brigham Young University and Biola University and Westmont College and Notre Dame.
Yeah.
How do these different schools that are all religious in nature maintain their right to preserve their religious identity without being told they have to have LGBT students or they have to, teach this or teach that.
Yeah.
So we're fighting for those things, and we're fighting for them shoulder to shoulder, side by side. And we need each other to win those battles. But then the second session is what makes it difficult and even impossible for us to collaborate or work together. And we believe that session, that middle session, will primarily center around the doctrinal theological divide. What does the LDS Church teach about God, Jesus, authority, salvation, sin? What are your views? And we have one of the BYU professors speaking to that from the LDS side. And we have Dr. Craig Blomberg speaking from the evangelical side, co-author of How Wide the Divide that came out in 1997. Then, on top of that, we have another presentation that will ask the question, what are the ramifications of the theological divide? So if we've come to terms with the fact that there is a divide, what does that mean? Is there any way that we can find the proper vocabulary of how to refer to each other? Because right now, evangelicals will not call the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints a Christian church. We don't believe its theological understanding is sophisticated or clear enough to be considered a Christian church.
And again, here's where
and they don't consider us either fully Christian.
Exactly. Here's the part where we are not giving up in our principles.
Absolutely not. And so then we have a lunchtime, and then we have a final session, which basically is, where do we go from here? Should we call it a day, say thanks for coming to Utah, it was nice to have you, have a great life, and we're done because there's nothing else that we can do? Or do we say to ourselves that day, here's 4 proposals, and we vote on 2 of them, and we say those others, I don't know what it's going to look like. But I'm going to believe, and I'm going to even predict, that when we leave on the 12th of December, we will have some kind of direction that will take us into 2026. And it might be more consultation. It might be investigating particular doctrinal distinctions. It might be, some kind of a study group. You guys go off and spend 6 months and get into the nitty-gritty and talk about this stuff and then bring back a report for the rest of us. I don't know what it's going to look like. It could look like a lot of things.
What is your hope after that meeting?
Well, that one, we don't say, one and done, see you later, have a nice day. We're not changing, you're not changing, so why are we even talking to each other? If that happens, I'm going to be pretty discouraged. But if they say, wow, in some regards, we really don't feel like we have a need to hold on to these things or that, and maybe I mean, it's not me that says this. It's my friend Robert Millett. He says there are what doctrines in the LDS Church that are peripheral. They're on the outside. They're on the corners. They're on the edges. And some of them are on the shelf, he even says. And you say to yourself, well, you have something that we don't have. You have an infallible prophetic leader who speaks on behalf of God to the church. So if your prophet were to say, these 6 things are peripheral, we have believed them in the past, we don't really practice them anymore, they're on the shelf, we know they're there, we haven't dealt with them, but we're going to take 3 of those things off the shelf and make a declaration. I mean, what if they did that? And what if the things that some of the people who disdain the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints the most use the most as arguments against the church, the LDS Church? And what if they took those things off and said, we don't believe those things. We're not going to practice those things, and we are officially declaring those things are not our beliefs anymore. And we have a modern revelation.
Yeah.
Well, some people say, oh, they'll never do it. They'll never do that, and they'll never do it about anything. I don't know. I don't know what they will do. I don't know what they won't do.
Yeah.
But we're going to have this conversation. Hopefully it leads to more steps in 2026, and we'll see where that goes. I mean, we can have another podcast, and we can let the listeners and the viewers know where we're at. We'd probably be happy to do that one way or the other. But I think all of the things that we've been talking about today is not only how to practice what we often call convicted civility, being convicted that you're right and convicted about truth, but also being very civil and gracious as you share that truth. We've been talking about it in the context of political issues and racial issues and various other kinds of divisions in our country. And we all need to get a handle on how to lovingly engage one another with the intent of trying to persuade somebody, no, brother, you don't have to go shoot Charlie Kirk. You shouldn't go shoot Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk is standing up for his beliefs, and he has a right to do that. And you have your beliefs, and you have your right to have those beliefs. But you do not get the right to kill somebody. You do not get the right to harm somebody. You don't get a right to stuff a sock in their mouth and say you can't speak ever again. That's not the American way. That's not the Christian way.
Yeah. So let me tell you something that happened to me a couple of weeks ago. I had 2 missionaries coming to my house. We spent a couple of minutes, like an hour or so, in my house. And so some
you
of
do that regularly? Or?
I try if I have the chance.
Okay.
I open the doors and I let them sit and give me the whole gospel
lessons, the
presentation. So they come and they do the same thing. And if you haven't ever have anybody like an LDS missionary coming to your house, they will present the restoration of the church, like what happened in the Book of Mormon, and I was like listening to them, and I asked them a question kind of like, what do I need to do in order for me to be saved? Because the whole presentation that you have given me is about the church and believing in the Book of Mormon. What do I need? And I said to them, look how much time we have spent talking to me about the Book of Mormon, the restoration of the church, but I don't know what I need to do in order for myself to be saved, you know? And I told him, like, I'm a evangelical, and for us, there's one thing and one thing only. You need to believe in Jesus. And I asked them, you as a missionary, if you have the elevator speech, you have 1 minute, 30 seconds to tell somebody, this is what you need to do. Where you're going to go to the Mormon book, you're going to go to the restoration of the church. Where are you going to go in order to present the message of salvation? And I told them, like, that is the key element that we need to agree on. The Book of Mormon will not save me. The Church of Jesus Christ will not save me. Same as my evangelical church will never save you. There's only one Savior, and His name is Jesus. You know, and they were kind of like amazed of that, and kind of like they said to me, yeah. we believe that. We believe that there is salvation in Jesus. And I said, maybe we need to starting with that approach of Jesus and not about this other things, you know what I mean? And it's kind of like the way that you, specifically, the way that you go into that, because I could have said to them, you guys are wrong. We are wasting time here. But through questions and a way of presenting them this important thing about who Jesus is, and it's through him only that we have salvation, that we were able to get into an agreement, you know what I mean? So I believe this is important, that we keep developing, working in those relationships, rather than the same way that I hate people that try to look as friends and not as friends, sorry, like appearing one of them when they are not. I don't like the people that are with the sign saying you're going to hell. You know what I mean? Because that is a way of destroying and not restoring.
That offends people.
Totally.
Know? So I think all in all, we've had a good conversation today about the nature and methodology of engaging people. We've talked about, really how we need to put the range of disagreement into perspective, and then we have to engage one another with thoughtful, gentle, respectful, loving questions and answers. And we've talked about various highlights along the way and some examples about how this conversation has happened, and the criticism I've faced in the past, which I don't feel like I face very much anymore. I'm sure I have critics, but they're not as loud as they used to be in the early 2000s and the late 2000s.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
So if you can tell an evangelical today, and after that an LDS person, directly in this idea of building bridges, what will you say to individually, like the evangelical, hey, here's the message? And after that, an LDS person, knowing your history and your connection and your background as an LDS, hey, you as an LDS, what will you tell them in this idea of building bridges?
Well, I would say that it all begins with kind of your heart. Where is your heart? If you want to score a point, if you want to win an argument, if you want to take down your LDS friend or neighbor, I think that sets you on one path. If, however, you want to make a friend, express the love of God to a person who you disagree with theologically, then you have to move in a different direction. You have to get on another path. The path is one of love, respect, and friendship. And you have to be tempered. You have to be careful. This applies to both Latter-day Saints and evangelicals. You have to be careful that you don't make winning the argument more important than winning the friendship. You have to also make sure you're not winning the friendship as such a priority that you're compromising your commitment to Jesus Christ. So it's a constant kind of figuring it out. But as you're doing that, as you're getting to know them, the individual person, he works with you, he lives down the street from you. Your son plays on a baseball team where their son plays on, and so there's all kinds of places and venues that we get to meet one another. And so I would say, again, where's your heart? Is your heart open for friendship and to share the love of Jesus?
Yeah.
Or is your heart to win an argument and to get the Latter-day Saints? Or vice versa, to get the evangelicals? And when you know your heart, then you begin with prayer. And you say, God, I would like to share some of the things you've done in my life with my neighbor. But I don't want to just storm over there and just knock on their door and say, let me in and let me tell you what I want to tell you. I'm asking you to open up doors, open up opportunities, open up occasions. Maybe it's out in the front of their garage, in your garage, or maybe they come over and ask for a cup of sugar. I don't know. But you cultivate with friendship and love and kindness enough of a relationship that you can, have some collegiality, some kindness. And then as you get to know each other, you might take it to the next level, either just in a conversation or even, hey, we're having a barbecue on Saturday night, come over and get a hamburger or whatever, and you just cultivate. Love, pray. Check your heart. And in the course of time, as you're praying and believing God, I believe God's going to bring either that person to ask you a question, or something is just going to percolate, and you're going to say, "Hey, have you ever thought about this?" Or, my grandmother just passed away, and I'm just so happy for her because I believe she's in heaven with Jesus right now. And that person might say, "Well, explain that to me, because we have a different take on that, or we look at it differently." And so I don't know how God's going to do it. And I'm not sitting on the couch waiting for somebody to come in and say, "Please, please talk to me." No, I'm cultivating, I'm praying, I'm seeking, I'm building a friendship, I'm tearing down the walls. All of that is in real time. It's happening. And as you get to that place where you have more friendship, then you can talk about it. So, for example, I've just invited, 10 to 15 different family groups to come and hear Greg Laurie. And yesterday I texted all of them, most of them, and I said, "Hey, I'd love to follow up with you and have a conversation with you over lunch about the crusade and see what you tell and have you tell me what you think."
Yeah.
How simple is that? That's not complicated. Well, I've gotten 3 or 4 lunch scheduled, and others will follow for next week of those people that wanted to talk about the crusade. And I'll say, "Well, what did you think about it when Greg Laurie said, if you've tried religion, if you've tried to be good, and if you've tried to be worthy, why not try Jesus?" And talk to them about that relational kind of idea. I'll have that conversation. I know I will.
Yeah.
I know who I am. I know my heart for them, and my longing for them to understand that. Then I always leave the results to God. I say, "God, I had a great conversation. I think I shared some important things. Thank you that you gave me those things to share. And I'm just going to say, Lord, whatever you want to do in that person's life, or even what you want to do in my life. Maybe you're going to teach me something through this experience." Sometimes it's very hard to know. And you just rest in God's arms, and you say, "One day when I get to heaven, I'll know if this conversation helped or hurt, or if it led to something." And remember we were talking about that wall, one brick at a time. Maybe all I get to do is lay number brick 37. And I don't know. I mean, that's 43 blocks bricks away from a complete wall.
Yeah.
I go out of that guy's life, I never know. And then I get to heaven, and I go, "Hey, Jim, your whole wall is built." I mean, there's not a
You build the wall. The wall was done.
You'd have no holes in your wall. And he goes, "Yeah, you know what? I want to thank you, because God told me that you put brick number 37 on my wall. Your testimony was brick number 37. And my grandmother's prayers, they were brick 4. I don't know what they are.
Totally.
But it's a sweet way to look at all the different contributions of different people in the work of God, to bring us to a knowledge where we hunger for him, we desire him, and we say, "I want to know him. I want to know God. I want to know his forgiveness. I want to know his love. I want to know his hope. I want to know my purpose." And so when you get to those things, again, you just leave the results to God.
Totally. I'm thinking, we mentioned it before, but I'm thinking on John 4, Jesus coming in, just starting asking for water, and that create the whole conversation, and that led the conversation. Woman? Yeah, that led the conversation to her recognizing.
Can you give me a drink?
I mean, that's how it started. That's how
it started.
And Jesus was able to present salvation to her life, and not just to her, but a whole city.
And he gave her dignity. She was a woman. She had been with 5 men, and she was now with another man.
Now, imagine if he would have started you being with 5 men. Please give me some water. You know what I mean?
Right. Hey, and he called her a word that reflects somebody that sleeps with many people. And he said, "Oh, by the way, give me some water." That woman's going to say, "No way, Jose. I'm out of here." She'd be terrified. She'd be scared. She would run away. But he dignified her.
I will encourage our viewers to read this story, because Jesus used all the answers or questions that she's asking him, to kind of like put it back to her. He keep going back. So it's like, "Why are you asking me for water?" Well, if you knew who was asking you, you are the one.
Should be asking for eternal water.
Beautiful. Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah. And that is a way of respect, love, but at the same time, truth. You know what I mean? So, anyhow, maybe it's time to wrap it up, and we can...
Well, thanks for checking out Building Bridges. We've been talking today about the Mormon Evangelical or LDS Evangelical, culminating even in a few weeks here in Salt Lake City, Utah, with a very important dialogue between LDS leaders and evangelical leaders. We're very much looking forward to that and what comes out of that conversation. I remember a friend of mine way back when who knew about the National Association of Evangelicals said, what if there's a day when the LDS Church fills out the application form and want to be a part of the NAE? Well, I said, well, that would be hard to do because we have a doctrinal statement. You have to affirm it. And well, what if they affirmed it? I'm like, well, that would change some things. And they said, well, how do you know that they wouldn't? And I said, I don't know. And that was a long time ago. But I sometimes wonder, like, could that happen?
Wow.
Enough modifications, and I know that some people are immediately thinking, well, we're not giving that up, and we're not changing that, and we'll never change that.
Yeah.
I don't know what has to be changed. I don't know what needs to be changed.
Totally.
But I do know that maybe there's modifications or adjustments that could take place in a way that neither offends nor bothers, and yet they're the kinds of things that get in the way of us having a mutually affirming relationship. So we'll see. And we'll take this. We'll walk down this road for as long as God wants us to walk down it. And if He says this conversation is over, there is no need for it. This side is not receiving anything. This side is being stubborn, whatever. Then we shut it down. We walk away and we go find other things to do with our lives.
Amen. Amen.
So thanks for watching. Please share this with other people and certainly like it and subscribe. That is very helpful for us. And we'll see you next time on Building Bridges.